I wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this corner office, not on this 32nd floor, and definitely not with my name etched into a brass plate that read CEO D. Walker. Years ago, they laughed when I told them I'd be more than just the guy mopping the break room floors. I still remember the way their words stung. Not sharp like a blade, but dull like a weight that never left my chest. They didn't just doubt me, they dismissed me. I was 23 back then. Quiet. Invisible. I kept to myself. I'd clock in at 6 p.m. and leave by 2 in the morning, just in time to catch the last bus home. The office building was quieter at night. Hollow echoes, flickering lights, the hum of vending machines, and the occasional late-night straggler too invested in spreadsheet to notice the janitor pushing his cart. That was me. This place, their place, it was different now. Brighter, polished, soulless. It had lost its edge. But I could still feel the past seeping through the walls, like whispers clinging to the drywall. The first time something felt off was 3 weeks ago. It was the day I signed the final acquisition papers. I was supposed to feel victorious, triumphant. Instead, all I felt was a strange stillness. Not peace. Not pride. Just this eerie quiet inside me. I had walked through the lobby with my lawyer, Julian, at my side. He kept talking something about assets and liabilities, but my focus was on the receptionist, Emily. She had once called me Dan the Mop Man to get a laugh out of her coworkers. Her eyes had widened when I stepped in, tailored suit and all, and she froze like time had betrayed her. But I didn't flinch. I didn't acknowledge her shock. I had rehearsed this entrance in my head 100 times. What caught me off guard was what I saw behind the front desk, something small. Insignificant to anyone else, but haunting to me. It was the same janitor's cart I used to push. The same rusted wheel that squeaked every 5th rotation. I had marked it once with a scratched D under the handle, more out of boredom than pride. I checked, and it was still there. Why had they kept it? It rattled me more than it should have. That damn cart. Like some piece of my ghost had been frozen in time while the rest of me had climbed the ranks. That night, I returned after hours, just like old times. I told myself it was nostalgia, that I just wanted to walk the halls and remind myself of how far I'd come. But deep down, I was looking for something. I didn't know what. Just something. The halls were quieter than I remembered. The walls felt tighter, almost as if the building was resisting my presence. I moved past the break room, then the mailroom, then the dimly lit basement where all the old files were stored. And that's when I saw it. A name tag. Mine. Taped to the old locker I used to use. Only it hadn't been removed. It had been scratched out, furiously. Not with the intention of cleaning it up, but with purpose. As if someone had wanted to erase me, obliterate the memory of who I was. Beneath the scratches, in bold red marker, someone had written, "Stay in your place." At first I laughed. Nervously. Like maybe it was old. Left over from a time when people hated seeing a poor kid with ambition. But something about the ink looked fresh. I touched it. The marker smudged slightly. Recently written. This wasn't an old memory resurfacing. It was a message. A warning. Julian later tried to brush it off. Jealousy, that's all. People don't like when someone rises out of the shadows. Maybe he was right. But that didn't explain the next morning. I arrived early. Earlier than anyone else. The office was still asleep. Lights off. Blinds drawn. I took the elevator up alone. But when I opened my office door, I paused. My chair was turned the other way, and there was steam rising from a coffee cup on my desk. I hadn't been in yet. I looked around. No signs of forced entry. The security log showed no activity for my badge before that moment. But someone had been there. Recently. Intentionally. The coffee was black. No sugar. No cream. The exact way I drank it back when I couldn't afford luxuries like oat milk or fancy syrups. It wasn't the coffee that disturbed me, it was the mug. Old. Ceramic. Cracked at the lip. A dollar store special with the words "Keep Dreaming" faded across the side. It was mine. From years ago. I had thrown it away. Or at least, I thought I had. I gripped the mug and stared out the window. 32 floors above the city. Everything I once begged for was now mine. And yet, I felt like I was being haunted, not by ghosts, but by a version of myself that refused to be buried. Maybe I wasn't imagining things. Maybe someone didn't want me here. Or maybe someone was trying to remind me that I didn't belong. As I stood there, coffee in hand, the lights suddenly flickered.
Once. Twice.
And then everything went still again, like the building was holding its breath. I didn't know it then, but that was only the beginning. The next few days blurred like fog glass. Meetings, emails, polite nods from board members who once never looked me in the eye. On the surface, everything seemed to be running smoothly. But beneath the gloss of success, I could feel it, something shifting. Something watching. The incident with the coffee mug should have been the end of it. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone found it in an old storage bin. Maybe they thought it was a gift. But every excuse I told myself crumbled under one truth. No one else knew about that mug. I'd used it during the graveyard shifts and kept it hidden in a drawer to avoid ridicule. It wasn't a company mug. It wasn't memorable. It was mine. A ghost from my past, suddenly resurrected. 3 nights later, I stayed after hours again. I told myself I was just catching up on reports, but that was a lie. I wanted to see if it would happen again. If the building would give itself away, show another glimpse of the strange rhythm I'd begun to feel pulsing through the walls. Around midnight, I heard it. The squeak. That same cursed wheel from the janitor's cart, echoing down the hall outside my office. I didn't move at first. I just listened. The sound drew closer, squeak, squeak, pause, then again. I stood slowly, walking to the door, careful not to make a sound. When I pulled it open, the hallway was empty. Nothing. No cart. No person. Just silence and dim security, lights casting long shadows. I walked toward the source of the sound. Each step felt heavier than the last. I passed the conference room, the IT server room, and then, just before reaching the supply closet, I saw it. A mop, propped upright against the wall. No bucket, no cart, just the mop, dripping water onto the pristine marble floor. A tiny puddle had formed beneath it, murky and dark. But the thing that stopped me cold was the smell.
Bleach. Strong.
Too strong. Overpowering. It wrapped around my lungs like a fist. I staggered back, nose wrinkling. Someone had used it recently. And a lot of it. There were no cleaners scheduled for the night. I'd made sure of it. I radioed the night security guard, David, and asked if anyone else had logged in.
He said no.
His voice was sleepy, unconcerned. But something in his tone made me pause, like he wasn't surprised I was asking. Has anything weird been happening lately? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. He hesitated. Define weird. That was all I needed to hear. I pressed. He relented. Turns out, I wasn't the only one feeling it. A few staff had mentioned strange occurrences, lights turning on and off without explanation, elevators arriving on floors no one called them to, papers found scattered after being neatly stacked.
Harmless things, he said.
Nothing serious. But I knew better. This wasn't harmless. It was deliberate. The next day, I installed a private camera in my office. I didn't trust the building system. Too many people had access to it. I needed eyes that only I controlled. That night, I left a note on my desk. Just a small post-it that said, "I see you." It was childish, maybe even paranoid. But I needed to push back. To test whoever, or whatever, was taunting me. I came back the next morning before anyone else arrived. The office was untouched. Everything exactly where I had left it, except the note. It was gone. In its place was another one. Same size.
Same handwriting.
Do you? I didn't sleep that night. My thoughts spiraled. Was this psychological warfare? A disgruntled employee? Someone trying to destabilize me now that I was in control? Or was it deeper, something personal? I began looking into the past, digging through the company's old files, staff records, janitorial contracts, anything that might offer a clue. But one thing kept coming up. My personnel file was missing. It was supposed to be in archives. Every former employee's file was. Even temps from years ago.
But mine? Gone.
Not misplaced. Not misfiled.
Erased.
Julian said it wasn't a big deal. You're the CEO now. Your past is irrelevant. But to me, that was exactly the point. Someone wanted it to be irrelevant. Someone wanted it to be like I never existed before now. The feeling followed me home. I started noticing small things in my apartment. Shoes slightly out of place. Mail left half opened. A photo of my mother, tilted just slightly on the mantel. Too small to prove. Too precise to ignore. Was I losing it? Was my mind unraveling under the pressure of success? Or was someone really trying to undo me from the inside out? On Friday, I received a package. No return address. No postage. Inside was a single item, a VHS tape. Who even used VHS anymore? I didn't own a player, but curiosity burned through my veins. I borrowed one from a local thrift store, set it up in my living room, and pressed play.
Static.
Then footage. Grainy. Black and white. A janitor, me, pushing the mop cart through the hallway. Camera positioned from an upper corner, timestamp blinking in the lower corner. But it wasn't security footage. Not standard. This was handheld. Someone had filmed me. Years ago. And the tape didn't end there. It cut to a different scene, one of me sitting alone in the break room, eating instant noodles from a cracked bowl. Then another, me, asleep in the supply closet during my 15-minute break. There was no sound. Just my image, looped in silence. Who had this?
Why?
The tape ended with a single frame. My face. Staring directly into the camera. Only I had never looked at a camera like that. Ever. Which meant it wasn't real.
Or it wasn't me.
But the face, the stare, it was mine. Identical. Except for one thing.
The eyes.
They were empty. Not tired. Not sad. Just gone. And in that moment I realized something chilling. Whoever was behind this didn't just want to scare me. They wanted to replace me. After the VHS tape, I couldn't pretend anymore. This wasn't just sabotage or a stalker. This was a carefully orchestrated unraveling of my identity. Someone or something was trying to erase the man I had become and stitch together a twisted version of who I used to be. I didn't go to work the next day. Instead, I spent hours replaying the tape, freezing each frame, inspecting every corner of the screen, searching for any clue, anything that might tell me where it had been filmed or by whom. That's when I noticed something strange. In the reflection of a glass panel behind me, there was a figure. Not fully visible. Just a partial silhouette.
Tall.
Slender. Wearing what looked like a janitor's uniform, but not one I recognized. It was outdated, faded, with a logo from the building's old branding, one that had been changed over a decade ago. I remembered that logo. It had been retired after the building underwent renovation. The same year, I had been let go. Suddenly, memories started bleeding back in, the way the head janitor at the time, Mr. Halvorsen, used to warn us about the dead floors. He'd claimed some sections of the building still ran on the original wiring and weren't connected to the rest of the grid. Places where cameras never worked. Places no one went anymore. I'd laughed at the time. Chalked it up to old man paranoia. Now, I wasn't so sure. I grabbed a flashlight, a floor map, and my old keyring. Yes, I still had it, buried in a drawer like a cursed relic. I returned to the building after midnight, telling no one. My heart pounded with every step as I moved through the silent halls, flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. I headed to the West Wing, levels that had been marked under maintenance for years. The elevator didn't go there anymore, but the stairs did. I descended. Past the basement, past the boiler level, down to the old sub-storage floor marked as B3. The air changed the moment I opened the door. It was damp, metallic. The scent of mold and old paper hit me like a wave. The hallway lights were dead. My flashlight flickered, its beam catching glimpses of collapsed ceiling panels, rusted carts, and dust-covered signage. Then I saw it.
A door.
Room B3-107. A nameplate hung crookedly on it. Archives. I turned the handle. It creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside, Rows of old filing cabinets loomed like tombstones. I moved slowly, brushing aside cobwebs, scanning labels. Personnel 1990 to 1995, contracts 2001, incident reports, internal use only. And then I saw it. My name, scrawled in pen on a manila folder shoved halfway into a metal drawer. I pulled it out, fingers trembling. The file was thick, heavier than I expected. Photos, reports, old performance evaluations. But something was off. The papers weren't originals, they were copies. Many pages were stamped, redacted, or internal review only.
Why?
I had been a janitor. What needed redacting? Then I found a sealed envelope tucked into the back of the file. No markings. Just one word handwritten on the front. Confession. I opened it. Inside was a single page, written in jagged handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you came looking for the truth. I tried to stop it. I really did. But he's stronger now. Smarter. He knows how to slip between the cracks. He watches the ones who rise too far too fast. And when he finds them, he replaces them. I saw it happen in 1997. Again in 2004. No one believed me. They said I was sick. Delusional. But I saw the reflection change first. Then the eyes. Then the body followed. He mimics. Not just your job. Your habits. Your life. He becomes you. And once he does, no one remembers the real you.
I'm sorry. H.
Halvorsen. It had to be him. I sank to the floor, breath shallow, heart pounding. My mind reeled. How much of this was real? A shape-shifting entity? A corporate doppelganger? It sounded absurd. But hadn't I already lived the absurd? Hadn't my own reflection started to feel unfamiliar? That night, I went home and did something I never thought I'd do. I broke the mirror in my bathroom. Not out of fear, but to check something.
To really see.
I picked up a shard and stared into it. My eyes stared back. Still mine. But just barely. The next morning, I returned to work, acting as if nothing had happened. But every person I passed, I scanned. Every good morning was a potential test. Was it them? Had they been taken too? I started noticing things, small discrepancies in people's behavior. Ellen from finance, who always wore a necklace her daughter gave her, gone. Chris from HR, who stuttered when nervous, suddenly eloquent and calm in meetings. Even Julian, he'd begun wearing cufflinks. The same kind I used to wear. And worst of all, they started using my phrases. My exact words. Little catchphrases I'd coined as a janitor. Things no one ever heard, now echoing from boardrooms and break rooms like they'd always existed. The shift wasn't coming. It had already started. But I wasn't done yet. If this thing was mimicking me, trying to steal my life, then I needed to draw it out. So I went public. Not to the media, no. Too risky. I called an emergency, all-hands meeting. I stood before the entire staff and announced a new legacy initiative. A company-wide campaign to revisit the building's history. We'd honor past workers. Dig into old records. Celebrate origins. People applauded. But I was watching their eyes. Looking for the one who blinked. Flinched. Panicked. That night, I returned to the dead floor one last time. I left a camera. Hidden. Recording 24/7. 2 nights later, I reviewed the footage. For hours, nothing. And then, at 3:03 a.m., a figure appeared. Identical to me. Same suit. Same walk. Same posture. He walked up to the same file cabinet. Opened it. Looked directly at the hidden camera and smiled. Not my smile. Not even close. It was wider. Darker. Hollow. And then, without touching it, the camera shut off. The feed went black. The footage changed everything. No longer was this a question of if something was happening, it was happening. There was someone or something walking around with my face, copying my life, and it wasn't human. At least not entirely. That smile on the footage haunted me. It didn't just stretch the lips, it distorted the soul. I couldn't sleep.
Couldn't eat.
I barricaded myself in my apartment, shutting off my phone, covering mirrors. unplugging my television. Paranoia was my new companion, but even paranoia began to feel rational. Because this wasn't a psychological breakdown. This was a replacement. A spiritual and energetic overriding of my identity. And it had already begun. I began to feel myself fading. My memories felt thinner, like carbon copies of what they once were. I'd start a sentence and forget what it was about halfway through. I'd reach for things in the kitchen I never bought. Wake up in clothes I didn't remember owning. The people around me confirmed my worst fears. A former colleague, Cynthia, who had always been kind to me, now addressed me as Julian in emails. When I confronted her, she was confused and swore I had always been Julian. Even my birth certificate, when I ordered a new copy, came back listing a different middle name, Bartholomew. A name no one in my family had ever used. I started digging deeper. I found others online. Strange message boards hidden in the depths of the internet. Threads titled, "The Echo Took My Voice. He Wears My Skin. Stolen by the Mirror." Hundreds of stories. All eerily similar. A shadow version. An entity born from forgotten hallways, malfunctioning reflections, twisted timelines. People replaced in their own lives, forgotten by everyone they loved, while a better, smoother version of them took over their world. They called it different names: the Echo, the Skinwalker, the Double, the Executive. But the pattern was always the same. The moment you began to rise above your station, when you reached for more than you were allowed, it came for you. That's when I remembered something. A strange moment from my janitor days. There had been a leak in the basement near the old elevator shaft. I was working overtime, midnight shift, cleaning the spill. The building had been almost empty. Quiet, eerie. And I saw something. Not a person. A blur. Like heat waves rippling across space, forming a humanoid figure. But only briefly. It disappeared the moment I turned to face it. I dismissed it as fatigue then. A hallucination. But what if it was real? What if that was when the thing first marked me? I was just a janitor then. Harmless. Easy to overlook. But maybe it saw something. Maybe it sensed my ambition. My desire to climb higher. To take the stairs I wasn't meant to. And now, all these years later, it had decided I'd gone too far. It wasn't just copying me. It was trying to delete me. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. I needed answers, real ones. So, I went to the only person I thought might help. His name was Daniel Kraus. A disgraced former architect who had once worked for the building's original design firm. He'd vanished from the public eye after claiming the structure was built on spiritual fault lines and that entities were drawn to the shape of mirror geometry. I tracked him down in a decaying cabin deep in the woods outside the city. He opened a door with wild eyes, but the moment I said my name, his face turned pale. "I was wondering when you'd come," he whispered. Inside, the walls were covered in blueprints. Our building's blueprints. Scribbled over in red ink. Circles. Arrows. Warnings. He pointed to a section labeled "The Hollow Core." "What is it?" I asked. He looked at me, terrified. "It's a mirrorless zone. A space that exists in negative. You design the upper levels, yes, but you forgot what lies below. B3, B4, and the subcorridors? They're void conduits. Places that aren't entirely real." He handed me a document. A diagram of a human figure. Next to it, phase map, identity echo points. "They target high identity density individuals," he said. "People who rise rapidly. Who become highly symbolic. Once you became the youngest executive, they saw you as prime for replication." "Why me?" I asked, voice shaking. "Because you were still anchored to your old self. You rose too fast. You never shed your janitor archetype. You're unstable in the grid. Vulnerable. That's how the echo gets in." I stared at the diagrams, at the impossible mathematics scribbled in the margins. "How do I stop it?" I finally asked. He hesitated. "You don't." That word hit like a punch. "You survive. You diverge. You create a path it can't mimic. One rooted in truth, pain, and chaos. It can only copy order, predictability, routine. But if you act outside the script, if you embrace the part of you it can't anticipate, you become immune. I left the cabin in a daze. The city felt different when I returned, like a dream I was about to wake from. Everything was still running like nothing had happened, yet I knew, beneath the surface, the architecture of my life had been altered. That night, I broke every routine I had. I shaved my head, burned my clothes, deleted my online accounts. I walked a different route, slept in a different room, ate food I hated, spoke in accents I didn't recognize as my own. I became a stranger to myself. And then it happened. 3 nights later, in the middle of a thunderstorm, I saw him, standing across the street from my apartment building, soaking wet, smiling. The other me. But this time he didn't move. He didn't approach. He just watched, and slowly, for the first time, he began to fade, like smoke in the wind. Because I was no longer standing in the version of me that he was created to replace. I had stepped into something wilder, more unpredictable. Something real. The storm passed, but the silence that followed was louder than anything I'd ever known. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window until dawn, watching the world exist in its mechanical rhythm, knowing I no longer belonged to the system that governed it. Not fully. I had slipped out, become a ghost in my own reality. But for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt present. My mind wasn't splitting. My memories weren't dissolving. And when I looked in the mirror that morning, the reflection I saw didn't flicker, didn't hesitate. It blinked when I blinked. It breathed with me. I was still me, but a different me. The world hadn't changed, but my relationship to it had. I quit my job. Sent in the resignation without explanation. No dramatic speeches. No attempts to reclaim my office. Let the other me enjoy the title, the salary, the corner desk. I was after something else now.
Truth.
Freedom. Reality beneath the mask. I started visiting the forgotten corners of the city, the places that didn't make it on maps. Derelict buildings, abandoned subway stations, dead shopping malls. Places where reality was thin, where the veil trembled. And I saw others.
People like me.
Not many, but enough. A woman on a park bench who spoke only in riddles, but knew my dreams before I said them aloud. A street artist who painted faces he'd never seen, yet painted mine from memory. An old man in a library who handed me a book that didn't exist in any catalog, full of names I remembered but had never spoken. We were the ones who'd slipped the script, glitched out of the narrative. And the world didn't know what to do with us. Because we weren't just anomalies, we were reminders. Reminders that something else exists beyond the routines, the upward ladders, the fabricated success stories. That maybe identity isn't a role, but a resistance. Still, I wasn't entirely safe. The echo didn't vanish completely. I could still feel it sometimes. In flickering lights. In strangers who stared too long. In reflections that lingered just half a second longer than they should. But it had lost its grip on me. Because I no longer moved, predictably. It couldn't trace my path if I didn't have one. And that became my weapon. Unpredictability. I wrote letters and left them in books at thrift stores. I performed music on street corners with no instrument, just my voice and rhythm. I walked barefoot in the rain, shouted poetry into alleyways, danced under bridges when no one watched. It sounds insane, but it was liberating, untraceable, unreplicable. The system, the mirrors, the algorithm, none of it could hold me anymore. Then one day, months later, I returned to the building. Not as an employee, not even as a visitor, just as a witness. The lobby was the same, but something felt hollow. The receptionist didn't recognize me. Why would she? According to their files, I'd never worked there at all. I stepped into the elevator. Pressed before. It didn't move. I pressed again. Nothing. So I took the stairs. Down and down. Each level colder than the last. Lights flickered above. Dust coated the railing. When I reached before, the door was chained shut, rusted, forgotten. But I had the key. The original janitor's master key I had kept all those years. It still worked. The lock clicked. The chain fell, and I stepped into darkness. The hollow core. It didn't feel like a basement. It felt like a memory that never happened. Geometry twisted. Hallways looped. Reflections of reflections danced along polished walls. I heard whispers, but they were all in my voice. My past selves. The version who never left janitorial work. The version who rose through corporate ranks. The version who broke. The version who ran. The version who stayed. All of them echoing. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I walked to the center of the space, where no reflection reached, and spoke aloud. I see you. Silence. Then a hum. A flickering shimmer in the air. The double appeared. Pale, flickering, smile wide and empty. But I didn't run. I didn't scream. I stepped forward and embraced it. And as I did, I whispered the truth it could never process. I forgive you. Because that's what it feared most. Not resistance, but acceptance. Recognition that it was part of me. A product of my denial, my ambition, my suppression. My desire to become something I thought would finally be enough. And as I embraced it, it began to unravel. Not violently. Not with fire or rage.
But gently.
Like a dream dissolving. It faded. And I stood alone.
Whole. For the first time.
When I climbed the stairs back to the surface, the sun had broken through the clouds. The city moved as it always did, cars honking, people shouting into phones, dogs barking at squirrels. But I was not the same. I was untethered.
Free.
No longer a man playing a part. No longer the janitor. No longer the executive. Just me. Unscripted. Unmirrored.
Alive.
And now, when I walk past mirrors, I no longer look to see if something is behind me. Because I already know. Nothing is. Because I reclaimed my reflection. And now, I own it. So now you know. This wasn't just a story about a janitor. This wasn't even about a mysterious elevator or a doppelganger trying to steal a life.
This was a story about you.
Because maybe you've felt it too. That strange echo in your chest when you walk into a room and feel like you've been there before, even when you haven't. That discomfort when you see your reflection and, for a split second, it seems off. That gnawing question that whispers in the back of your mind. Is this really who I am, or just who I've been trained to be? We all walk through this world carrying versions of ourselves we never chose, masks handed down by family, by culture, by fear. We play roles we don't remember auditioning for. We chase dreams that aren't even ours. Until one day the mirror cracks, and we see something behind it. Something more. Something real. The janitor thought he was nothing. Invisible. Disposable. Just a cog in the machine. But in the shadows, in the silence, he found the truth. He was never just a janitor. He was a witness. A question. A rebellion in human form. And when the world tried to replace him, when the reflection tried to erase him, he didn't run. He didn't fight it on its terms. He remembered who he was. And that made him unstoppable. So, if you're listening to this right now, and you feel like you're slipping, like the world doesn't see you, like you don't even see yourself, just know this. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are awakening. The moment you begin to question the story, the moment you pause and say, what if this isn't all there is? That's when the veil starts to lift. That's when the echo loses its power. And that's when you become dangerous. Not to others, but to the illusion. So step back from the mirror. Stop trying to fit your soul into a reflection. And start walking your own path, even if it terrifies you, even if no one understands. Because the mirror was never meant to define you. It was only ever meant to show you what you're not. The real you? That's the part no reflection can hold. No algorithm can predict. No imposter can steal. It lives in your laughter, your rage, your tears, your silence. In every choice you make when no one's watching. In every truth you whisper to yourself at night. And when you own that truth, when you finally stand in it, you become whole, uncopyable, unforgettable.
Just like he did.